Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyav Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhinas Santu, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukha Bhag Bhavet, Sarvastaratu Durgani, Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyatu, Sarvas Sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayatte Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We begin today on verse number 62. Tameva sharanam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prapsyasi shashvatam. Take refuge in him along with all your heart, O descendant of Bharata, Arjuna. By his grace you shall attain supreme peace and the eternal abode. In the earlier verse, we saw Krishna told Arjuna, as you can see, in the hearts of all beings, O Arjuna, resides the Lord, whirling all of them by his Maya as if they were mounted on a machine. And we discussed this last week about what this verse implies, about the extent of freedom that we have in life. How much freedom I have in life is directly related to what my notion of I is. As long as my I is focused on my body and mind, that is, as long as I continue to refer to what this body does as what I am doing, as long as I continue to refer to the experiences of this mind as my experiences, I'm really, although we don't say I am this body, I am this mind, that is what we really mean. That the functions of the body, I take it upon, I refer to them as my activities. As long as my I is associated with this body and this mind, I'm not really free. Because the body and mind are material objects made of atoms and molecules, just like any other object in this world is. And because they are products of matter, they are bound by the laws of matter. My body cannot fly, for instance. Well, it's bound by the law of gravity. So similarly, there are all of these material laws which govern this body and mind. And therefore, we cannot really say the body and mind is really free. Anything which is under law of any kind cannot be free. You might have limited freedom in some aspects, but you cannot really say you are free if you are under any kind of law. The only entity which is not bound by any law, any rule, is the spirit, consciousness. Consciousness, there are no boundaries and there is nothing governing it. Now, when my I becomes identified with that consciousness, I am really free. At present, my sense of I is kind of confused. It's not totally connected with the body and mind in some ways, because I still feel I'm a conscious being. Where does this idea that I'm a conscious being come from? Because the body and mind are not conscious in themselves. So it's the consciousness of the spirit, the Atman, which is percolating through the body and mind. So at some kind of a subliminal level, I don't see myself. Well, we don't know how the table sees itself. We don't know. But from our perspective, this is like a lifeless entity. I'm able to distinguish myself from all these material objects because I think I'm living, I'm conscious. So there is this awareness of being something more than just a material object, and yet we kind of do everything through these material entities, seeing them as myself. Which is why we often go back and forth between our feeling of, oh, I'm free, I'm a free being, and the feeling like, oh no, I'm not free, I've got this, I'm bound by this, I'm limited by this, I'm frustrated by this. So we have a vague sense of freedom within us, but every time we feel free, there are situations in life which remind us, no, I'm not really as free as I think. And every time you are kind of bound down by external pressures and external things, there is something in your heart which says, no, I can get out of it. So we're kind of in this twilight of freedom and bondage between matter and spirit. So this kind of an impossible alliance, if you like, between matter and spirit has occurred. I call it impossible because the two cannot mix. It's like saying an alliance between light and darkness. There cannot be any alliance between light and darkness because in order to be an ally, you have to be together. And light and darkness cannot be together. If there is light, well, the darkness goes away. If there is darkness, then there is no light. And spirit and matter are as opposites as light and darkness. One is free, the other is bound. One is immortal, the other is mortal. One is imperishable, this is perishable. In every respect, it's not just a difference in degree, it's like the opposite sides of the pole. And so the two can never really meet. And yet, they seem to have met. Body and mind and spirit somehow seem to be dwelling together. That is why it is called Maya. Maya is something that makes the ridiculous look normal. Maya is something that makes the impossible seem possible. So, from the Gita perspective, if ever there is a question whether I am free or not, an accurate answer to that would be, as the body and mind, I'm not really free. I may have the limited superficial bits of freedom, not really free. As spirit, I'm totally free. And it's our choice. Where do we want to be? Now, of course, put it in these terms, we all like to be the spirit, which is good. That's an aspiration. We know at least what we need to be in order to experience that freedom. Then we say, well, right now, I'm feeling these pangs of bondage and limitation because I seem to be kind of trapped within the body and mind. And that's why the teachings that Krishna gives in the Gita are meant to release us from this enslavement to our own body and mind and to make us realize that we are spirit. And that's why the verse that we just read now, take refuge in Him. Now Him here again, Tam, although again limitation of language, we're not really referring to any being, and especially a male being given that. It's what it says is take refuge in the spirit, in that which is not bound by law. Takes refuge in that which is free. Now, that which is free, objectively, seeing it outside of ourselves, which is what we generally tend to do because our senses are so programmed as to see things outside. They're not so well trained to see things inside. So in order for me to see things outside, all that I need to do is open my eyes. No effort required. But you say, now, can I turn my sense of vision and look inside my heart? Then we know the difficulty. So, because it is so much easier to look out than to look in, so when we say, look at the spirit, surrender to that spirit which is beyond any laws, we generally tend to look outside. And when we look outside, whatever we see or whatever we hope to see, that will take the form of what we generally call by the term God. And then, of course, people can visualize or conceptualize that ideal. Well, if God is outside, well, where is that outside God? Then you can, of course, think of a heaven where the Lord resides. So you have complete freedom of how do you want to visualize the divine externally. But it's just as possible to look at that divine within the heart, which is exactly what Krishna mentioned in the earlier verse. In the heart of all beings resides the Lord. So if I look at that Lord, rather than seeing as dwelling somewhere outside in a heaven, is dwelling in my own heart, then this needs a little bit more effort because I'm looking inside rather than outside. Then I need to then take refuge in the Lord inside my heart. The same situation will come. Is the Lord inside my heart different from who I am? Or am I a part of that Lord? Or what is exactly my relationship with the Lord who dwells in my heart? And in the beginning, again, it's not unusual for us to think, well, this is who I am, and a struggling soul, and in my heart the Lord dwells. Now, as my love for God deepens, we will see that the gulf that separates me from God begins to become smaller and smaller, which is in like any kind of a relationship. Any relationship we have, sometimes just two strangers, they don't even know one another, and the first time they meet, well, they get to know one another. And then there is still this gulf separating them because there is a lot you don't know. The other person is still the other person. Now let's say your friendship kind of becomes a little deeper, a kind of bond gets created between the two. Then a kind of a relationship is built. Then you are no longer strangers as you were before, you somehow seem to come closer. The gulf separating the two becomes smaller and smaller. Then you somehow, relationship itself is a kind of bridge that makes you are a part of that person. It's like when as we were growing up as little babies, the first bond obviously for most of us would be, well, my mom, because she is the one person, the first person I have met and been. Although that time, God knows when did that idea came that this person who is taking so much care of me is my mom. But that's the first person. That's the first kind of a connection that gets built. But let's say as we grow older, our parents probably, we instinctively, closely, that it just happens that we just kind of automatically feel we are a part of it. And that's what family means. I'm a part of the family. What makes me think that I'm a part? I mean, what is this idea of a part? That is somehow that these people who I see as a part of my family are somehow closer to me than the hundreds of people I meet on the street as I go out to work or study every day. So the closer we feel a kind of being a part of someone. And then we know, then this relationship can get so close, so intimate, that then that you no longer feel you're a part, you just feel they are your very own. And sometimes that kind of a closeness when it comes, that anything that happens to one's beloved, the one whom you love, you feel as if it had happened to you. So then that you're no longer just a part, you just become one with that object of your love. Now that's the kind of relationship that develops in our heart. So the divine in our heart, as we begin to come closer and closer, I begin to see that I'm a part of the divine. And when that love intensifies, then there is no more that distinction. It's a little bit like even when you do puja, when you do worship. In the beginning, as you begin the worship, you have the idea, well, I'm doing worship. So there is this object, the deity whom you are worshipping, and you are doing the worship. But when a little bit of the loosening of the ego occurs, then even this idea, I am the one, I am doing worship of Ramakrishna, for instance. When my mind completely is absorbed in the object of my worship, then I am not even thinking, I am doing worship. Then in my field of consciousness, only Ramakrishna exists. And so, although I'm not saying I am one with the divine, in my consciousness, there are no longer any two people. It's not me doing something, it's just the object of my worship. So that's what happens. So it's the divine in my heart. When I get closer and closer and closer, you may not, and you don't have to proclaim, I am the divine, I am the God in my heart. There's no need to do it. What it means is, when that love intensifies, the point is reached, your mind has only God in it. There is nothing. And then later on, of course, philosophically, if you want to think, well, if there is only God there, then where did this I disappear? That's a kind of a philosophical discussion you can have later on. So that's what he means. Take refuge in Him alone with all your heart. So when is it possible to take refuge in anyone in the truest sense of the term? And taking refuge is possible only when we completely acknowledge that I'm completely helpless, that I cannot do anything on my own. So total surrender can come with the recognition that my present I cannot get me out of this. As long as I feel I can do something for it, I will do something. It's just the question of survival. So for survival, people will do anything. But at some point, a stage is reached when you find, no, there's nothing I can do beyond this. That the limits of my effort are reached. There's nothing. And then, it's only then that I'm totally able to give myself to a higher power, someone who can rescue me. So I can take refuge and seek for rescue only when my own efforts have completely reached their limit. That's why Swami Vivekananda made one very profound statement, which goes contrary to our popular way of thinking. And he says, God helps those who do not help themselves. That doesn't mean God helps all these lazy people who don't want to do anything. What it means is that I try my best, and after having tried my best, I recognize that the instruments I'm using are too limited, are too frail, are too bound by laws. So that which is bound by laws, how can it take me to something which is beyond all law. So then I say, I cannot do anything. And with that, and that feeling, that the total feeling of helplessness is a sign that the ego now is willing to give up. Otherwise, as long as this little bit of ego, no, I can do something, I can do it, surrender won't come. So take refuge in Him alone is a recognition that my present material identity cannot take me out of this mess. By His grace you shall attain supreme peace. By His grace, again, the grace of the Spirit, the divine in my heart, that alone can take me to that stage of supreme peace and the eternal abode. All of the abodes we have are temporary. Clearly, of course, the homes, that which we call our home, is in lots of time in the material part of it, the walls and the roof and the home or the apartment where I live. Many of us have changed several apartments and several houses in the course of our lifetime. So it's kind of easy to know that, well, none of those homes were eternal, clearly. Plus that which is dwelling in the home, the body itself is not eternal, it's perishable. Now the body is a kind of home to us. We have lived in this apartment. It's kind of a flexible apartment though. When we were born, the apartment was very small. It kind of grows with age. But again, this apartment is as perishable as the other apartments we live in. And then the Gita has already pointed out in earlier verses, the other apartments we may find in heaven or hell or wherever we go, they are not permanent either. So none of the dwelling places where we are is permanent. The only permanent, the eternal abode will come only when we give up our identity with these perishable parts of our personality and hold on to the imperishable. That is what Krishna means when he says, by His grace you shall attain supreme peace and the eternal abode. 63. Iti te jnanamakyatam guhyat guhyataram maya vimrushyai tadasheshena yathechasi tatha kuru. Thus has knowledge more secret than all secrets has been declared to you by me. Reflect on it fully and act as you like. So here, Krishna has almost come to the end of his teaching. And he's telling Arjuna, don't take what I have said very lightly. Because what I have shared with you, what I have given you, is not just a secret, but the secret of all secrets. By secret of all secret is meant, it's not necessarily meaning something esoteric. What it means is that this knowledge is not commonly available. It's not a part of a regular conversation of most people in the world. And even among the few who may have access to these insights, very few understand it. And among the few who understand it, very few practice it. And among those who practice it, very few practice it till the end. And among those who practice it till the end, very few become liberated. So the statistics are not that encouraging. But for that matter, winning a lottery, statistics are not that encouraging either. That doesn't stop people from buying lottery tickets, and therefore a sincere spiritual seeker is again and again referred to in the Gita and the Upanishads as Dhira, the brave one, the courageous one. And who is a brave or a courageous one? The one who will never give up. Otherwise, it's easy to give up and say, oh, these billions of people, how many are really even struggling for God, and how many really become enlightened? And what's the point? I'm never going to realize God. I'm not never going to get it. So why do it? And so most people don't even try because they are not even aware that such a thing is possible. Some people who may become aware of it may kind of get frightened away and saying, well, let me be practical. What are the chances that I might succeed? And if I'm not going to succeed, why invest my time and energy into it? So some people will kind of back off. There are others who may kind of get into it, struggle for a few days or months, a couple of years, and say, well, nothing much seems to be happening, and then they give up. But then there is where you need the courage, the bravery, the determination, and say, no, I've taken it up. I know that the path is difficult, but I'm not going to run away just because something is difficult. I'm going to march on. To such a brave and courageous one, it's then that God's grace comes. And that's essentially what grace is. Grace is a mysterious kind of help we get in life when we refuse to say, I cannot. Yes, I can. It's become a slogan now in every field. But it's so important in spiritual field. No matter how daunting it might seem, no matter how difficult it might seem, if you are practicing your meditation morning and evening, you cannot sit for your practice with the idea, oh, I just have to go through this chore, nothing much is going to happen today. No, that's not the way to do it. Every time you sit for your prayer and meditation, you have to sit with this heart filled with hope, heart filled with determination. I can. And no matter how difficult the struggle, I will. To such a person, with such an attitude, you will find help comes. How it comes, when it comes, in what form it comes, we cannot, none of us knows in advance, but it comes. And that kind of an help, which comes in a most unexpected way, we see it as the help that comes from the divine. And that is what is called grace. And so that is what Krishna is mentioning here, that the teaching that I have given you is not commonly available. It's not a part of common conversation. It's secret because very few people have access to it, very few people are even interested in it. But if you have taken it to the heart, then now it's up to you to decide what to do. So that's the thing. After 17, this is the 18th chapter, almost coming toward the end of his teaching, Krishna now tells Arjuna, reflect on it fully and act as you like. I love this verse. Because think about it this way. Arjuna was so totally devoted to Krishna. Krishna had just to tell him, do it, and he would have done it. In fact, the Gita need not have occurred at all. When Arjuna said, I don't want to fight, and all that Krishna had to do was just look at him and say, just do it. And Krishna had that power, and Arjuna had that trust, he would have just done it. But that's never the Vedantic way. Vedanta never, ever takes away our freedom. So yes, Arjuna was confused, he had a question. Krishna tried to answer all of his questions as best he could. And after giving the teaching, he says, think about it, now do as you please. So we cannot run away from responsibility. We have to. All the teachings are available, the options are available, the choices are available. We have to make the choice, and we have to take responsibility for the choices we make in life. Swami Vivekananda's one poem is there, no one but me to blame. So, if things go wrong, you have nobody to blame. If things go right, you can be happy. You made the right choice. So, that's again, there is a courage involved in taking responsibility. A lot of time, most of us, when things go well, we don't have any problem in saying, well, I did it. When things go wrong, it's then we try to figure out, why did things go wrong? And almost always, the answer to that why comes like, because of that person, because of that thing, because the weather was bad, because the government did it, because blah, blah, blah. It's always somebody else who is responsible for why things go wrong in my life. But when things go right, it's usually my wisdom which did it. And so what Krishna is saying here is, I am responsible for all the joy I experience in life. I am responsible for all the pain I experience in life. I am responsible, which is actually a very hopeful message. What it means is that if I am responsible for everything that has happened to me, my life is under my own control. I can shape my own future. That's why Swami Vivekananda said, you are the creator of your own destiny. So there is no outside force called fate or anything that is deciding where I will be. Because I can make or I can unmake. So it's a very hopeful message, and which is what really Krishna says, now you can do as you please. I have done my job teaching you, now you do as you wish. Verse 64. Sarvaguhya tamam bhuyaha shruno me paramam vachaha ishtosi me dridhamiti tato vakshyami te hitam. Here again my supreme word, the most secret of all. Because you are dearly beloved of me, therefore I shall tell you what is good for you. So after having given all the teaching, after having told him, now you can do what you want, Krishna now gives what sometimes you say, postscript. Sometimes you kind of send a letter or an email, and after having signed, you feel, oh, there is one more thing I have to say. And then you say that PS, you just kind of give. So that postscript of Krishna's teaching, which sometimes is called Charama Shloka by some students of Gita, meaning the supreme teaching. Now that's the interpretation of some of the students of Vedanta. That supreme teaching will come in the next two verses. But before we go there, if you have any ideas, comments, questions about what we have seen up to this point, you can feel free to ask.
Swamiji, we talked about how taking responsibility would empower us in the sense that we would feel like we're in control. But the problem I'm having is that how would we then think about surrendering? If we think we are responsible, we are in control, yeah, that's the conflict I have. Like, how would we then surrender if we think, oh, yeah, I'm responsible?
Yeah, it's a very good question. We have to tire our wings. So there is a story that Ramakrishna told about a bird sitting on the mast of a ship. So the story is a ship was anchored in a port, and the bird was sitting on its mast, and apparently the bird fell asleep. Must have been a really deep sleep, because then the ship set sail and it has gone far inside the sea. That's when this bird woke up and said, oh no, all my family is there on the port, and now it just sees water everywhere. And the bird doesn't even know which side the land is, because the extent of the bird's vision, there is water everywhere. And so the story goes on to say, first the bird flew in the western direction, flew for a long time, there's water everywhere. And then there's a limit to how long its wings can take. So again it comes back, because at least you know there is one place it can stop, and that's the ship. Goes, again comes back, and again sits on the mast. Said, let me now try another direction, maybe the land may be on the other side. So then tries the east, comes back. North, comes back. South, tries it and recognizes that there is no land anywhere. My wings are not strong enough to take me to where there is land. And the only refuge I have is this mast of the ship. And so all that it does is, now its wings are completely tired. It cannot even go, even if it wants to. So it just remains there. And then the ship goes and ultimately, of course, goes and reaches another one port, reaches land, and the bird is able to find land again. So we are that bird. And our wings are not tired in the sense that my sense of I is still strong. I still feel I can do this, I can do that. I mean, we can feel helpless sometimes about our spiritual thing. It's like, oh, this thing seems so difficult. But fixing a cup of coffee is not that difficult, right? Fixing my breakfast. So I mean, we are doing so many things in the course of a day. So I feel that there are some things I can still do. There may be a few things I cannot do, but there are some things I can do. So a total surrender cannot occur as long as I feel I'm capable of doing something. And so as long as my sense of I is strong, I need to do it. I cannot simply pretend, oh, I'm nobody. It's not a question of saying it. It's a question of feeling it deep inside the heart. A point will be reached when I know that I cannot even take the next step unless it is willed by God. That I cannot even take the next breath on my own. Then is the time the total surrender will occur. Now that does not mean that I should not make an effort to surrender right now, in however imperfect a way it is. But as long as the ego is active, surrender will necessarily be incomplete. And so yes, so it is a kind of an ambiguous situation. There are things when my ego is strong, there are things I feel like surrender. But gradually, the more I look within myself, the more I reflect on my sense of I begin to see that the longer my I remains connected with the body and mind, it's never going to be completely free. That's when then this detachment or giving up or letting go will become easier. Now, making all these efforts in life is a kind of the bird kind of going everywhere, and then finally all the wings are tired and says, no, I don't know anything. Sharanagata, Sharanagata. Then you will be completely surrendered. That's how this occurs. So it's a process that occurs over time. Yeah. Girija? Yeah.
Swami, I wanted to refer back to something we talked about last week. I've been thinking about this all week and I'm still struggling with it. You said, we were talking about love, and you said love is never a feeling. Love is a path. It's what makes you do your practice day in and day out, year after year. Is that part about love is not an emotion? Because it sounds like you're talking about determination. What makes you do your practice day after day, or even devotion on a personal level?
Well, I mean, in the path of devotion or bhakti, a lot of thinking has gone into just investigating what is the nature of that love. Is love an emotion? Is love a determination? So all these questions that you have raised, these are the kind of questions that were raised. Now, love can get expressed through emotion. Love can get expressed through any of these ways, but love itself is not that. Because emotions can come and go. We know that there are times when we are very emotional, sometimes we don't feel emotional. And so, a lot of times when we feel love kind of going up and down, it's really the manifestation of love through emotions that goes up and down. Because love itself is I hesitate to even use the word power. I really hesitate to use any word, because no word is actually accurate. But when we say God is love, for instance, because love is a word that we use in common conversation, we tend to think that God is love means God is whatever we understand by love. But I think it's a much more profound expression that often gets then misunderstood. The best way I can think of is that anything that leads to unification, that's love. And I think probably the closest you could come to call it is probably the word power. Love is a power, if you like. Again, it's not a very accurate description, but it's better than calling it emotion. And it doesn't go up and down. There is no waxing and waning in love. Now, the instrument through which the love gets expressed will have its ups and downs, but the love itself is a constant. So that's the idea. I'm just trying to find the right language to use it, but it's not emotion. Shrikant,
Swamiji, when he says it is secret of secrets, so I think when all this knowledge is crux of Vedas and it is already there, what part is he's calling a secret, or is it secret really, or what is the behind calling it a secret?
Secret, well, we know what secrets are, and that is something that is not easily accessible. It's like certain documents will be a secret unless and until you have a security clearance. Otherwise, it's a secret to you. You don't know what it is. Or unless you don't have, suppose they are password protected. If you don't have the password for you, then that's a secret to you. So, in some ways, we could say the entire Gita is a secret. And that secret you can kind of understand at different levels. In much older days, when there was nothing written down, it was a secret only controlled by people who knew it by heart, because there were no books, there was nothing in writing. Then maybe some manuscripts came, and then people who had access to the manuscripts, they controlled access to it. Then of course with paper and printing, now again if you can afford to buy the Gita, and nowadays you don't even need to buy it, there are online free versions are available. If you have access to internet, the access to the text of the Gita has become much easier now than it was a few centuries ago. But now just having the text available also, it's still a secret because the book is in Sanskrit. And so of course, you need a translation. And if you have access to the translation, it's still a secret because we might know the meaning of the text, but we can see what's on the line, we may not know what is between the lines. And therefore, what is between the lines, we need access then to commentators like Shankaracharya, who will then, the inner meaning of it, the inner secret of it, Shankaracharya will explain. Now, those of us who have studied Shankaracharya's commentaries, doesn't mean that everyone who has studied these commentaries will become enlightened, because even after studying the interpretation and all the different opinions and the explanations, it's still a secret unless and until I actually try to live according to it, try to practice it. And that's why we saw earlier when Krishna used the word Buddhi Yoga, that Buddhi within me, that Buddhi needs to become more refined. At present, that power of understanding within me is kind of very distracted. That needs a kind of refinement. And we saw that the repetition of the Gayatri prayer, for instance, is really a prayer for the refinement of my power of understanding. So the more my power of understanding becomes sharper, the clearer my mind becomes, then the meaning of the Gita then becomes more clear to me. Now, even when the meaning becomes clear, it's still a secret to me unless and until then I actually start living according to it, started practicing it. When I start practicing it, then gradually I'm directly able to experience everything that Krishna says. So, from understanding at the intellectual level, it should become a part of my own daily experience. So you can see, the thing is a secret at so many different levels. And so it's almost like, you open one door and there's another one door, open that door, open. You keep on opening these doors until at last you're there in the presence of the truth itself. And so that is what Krishna means by saying, well, this is the secret of all secrets. That's the idea.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anish?
So Swamiji, earlier you talked about freedom versus bondage, the sense of free will, and so in that the freedom comes from the spirit, and then the sense of bondage comes from being, identified with the body and being identified with the mind. So, my understanding is that, at every moment in time we have freedom in the sense of our decisions. So we can choose to do right versus wrong. We can choose to do something versus another thing. So at that time, you could think that at that moment our choices are dictated by our mind, our previous states of our mind. But then is our true freedom in every moment only coming from the spirit in that case? Is our freedom in those cases, like when we have true ability to make a decision to, one thing versus another thing, is the true ability to make a free decision come directly from the spirit then rather than from the mind?
The sense, the experience of freedom comes, the source is the spirit. But since that freedom is being expressed and experienced through the mind, which itself is limited, that freedom is limited because of the instrument you have. It's a little bit like for instance, okay, let's see the electricity, for instance, the power. Now, how bright the bulb would be would depend on, the wattage, the watts of this thing, of the bulb. Now, if the bulb is of a very low wattage, you won't get a bright light. Now, the power comes from electricity, which can, if I put a bulb with a higher wattage, I'll have a much more light. So the limitation is not in the electricity, is limitation in the instrument through which it comes. So the freedom that we have is infinite because it comes from the spirit. But our mind is presently of low wattage. And so that freedom, and then the mind is not just low wattage, it's also clouded. And so the decisions that I make, even through the sense of freedom, are conditioned by the existing biases and prejudices already present in the mind. And so that is why the decisions can go wrong, because the decisions are not being made by the spirit. The decisions are being made by this confused mind, but the sense of freedom comes from the spirit.
And so if we want to cultivate more freedom in our life, then do we, in a sense, try to chip away at that darkness continually? We basically try to continue to chip away at it to let the light shine through more directly.
Refinement of the mind.
Refinement of the mind.
Yes. Actually, that is a question gets asked in Vedantic text, because in the Upanishads it is said that the spirit is beyond the reach of the mind and the senses. The senses cannot go there, the mind cannot go there. And then when you read something like that, then you feel, then what hope do we have? Because what else do we have? The only instruments we have are the body, mind, and senses. And none of them can go anywhere close to the spirit. So where do we stand? Now the Upanishad also says, Manasaivedam aptavyam, manasa eva, that highest truth can be got, manasa, by mind alone. So on one side the Upanishad says, the mind, senses and speech cannot reach there. The senses and the body cannot reach there. On the other side, another Upanishad says, through the mind alone you can reach it. Now, just take them at face value. They are just mutually contradictory statements. And that's why we need then the commentator to say, well, how do you resolve this? And then Shankaracharya in a commentary says, Susamskritena manasa, that mind which is purified, that mind which has attained clarity, that mind can take me to this. So, what we need, the situation is not hopeless. The mind that we have now is kind of clouded. And we know that. We know that the stresses, the anxieties, the confusions that we have in the mind is because there is not enough clarity. Oftentimes we are not able to figure out, well, what is the right thing for me? Is it this right or is that right? Should I choose this? Should I choose that? Now I'm not able to see things clearly, because if I could, I would always make the right decision. But I know that I sometimes take every decision with the idea that this is the right one, this is what will make me happy. But sometimes, in retrospect, I discover that which I thought would be right, that which I thought would make me happy, was not right, did not make me happy. So, my mind did not give me the right advice because the mind was not clear. So what we need to do now is to bring about that clarity in the mind. So all of the spiritual practices that we do, whether it's prayer, meditation, selfless service, study, in the initial stage, they are primarily practices for inner purification. Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga purify our willpower. Even willpower needs purification. Or where do I employ this power of the will? That unless that power is purified, my willpower can be employed in doing terribly destructive things. Even these terrorists and others, you got to give it to them that they have willpower, but it's gone in a very, very destructive direction. So willpower is a power, and if I use it wrongly, it's going to hurt me, it's going to hurt a lot of people. So Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga will purify my willpower. Bhakti Yoga will purify my power of emotions. Emotions are a power too. Feelings are a power too. So path of bhakti, path of devotion purifies my emotions. And the path of jnana, the path of knowledge, purifies my power of reasoning. Even the reasoning needs to be purified. Otherwise, great intellectuals can be the most crooked people. They apply logic, they apply reason, but they do it in both self-destructive ways and ways that can hurt others. So again, all of these things need purification. And to the extent I'm able to purify these three primary functions of the mind becomes pure and clear. And the mind becomes pure and clear, it becomes a perfect instrument then for me to free itself, free myself from the limitations of body and mind. Okay. Yeah, Divesh.
Swamiji, just what we're talking now, would I be correct in understanding that real knowledge is about understanding the possibilities and not as much as about the decision making? So if I've got two options, then I make one decision, the result of which allows me to consider, okay, there's 5 other options. And then I say, okay, let's stop making decisions and let me first explore the landscape of all the possibilities. And I become aware of it, I become conscious of it, and not be dragged into having to choose one. And let the world of possibility just keep expanding.
Well, it's great to know the possibilities, but there will be occasions you will have to choose. Nobody else will do it for you.
Yes.
So you have to make a choice, and you have to stand by your choice, wherever that choice leads you.
Yes.
Yeah. Rajni?
Swamiji, so in terms of practice, when we think that the Atman is a ruler, then I'm wondering if that's the right way to think about it, because Atman doesn't do anything, right? Or he doesn't will anything, doesn't do anything. So should we instead think that we are the intellect guiding the mind? Because Atman doesn't guide anything, it doesn't care.
The Atman which is not deluded doesn't do anything. A deluded Atman will rule also. I mean, the thing is this. When we say the Atman doesn't do anything, that Atman let me put it this way. Right now you feel you're doing things, right? Well, you are the Atman who feels I am doing things. So the Atman is kind of deluded now, because of which the Atman feels I am doing it. So that's the dilemma. I am the Atman, and I read in the books the Atman doesn't do anything, and right now I feel I am doing things. So why is my self-understanding wrong? If I am the Atman, I should feel that I am not doing anything, and yet I feel I am. So there is something has gone wrong. I've somehow begun to see something else as me. And then you look inside and say, well, what is exactly doing things? And then you see, well, it's the body and mind doing everything. And because I have become identified with this body and mind, I feel I'm doing it. The Atman is still not doing anything. But if the body and mind are there, then the Atman is already kind of deluded. Because unless the Atman forgot itself, the body and mind wouldn't have come. So it's a little bit like asking, is God the creator? Well, God is the creator only after God created the world. But if God is all that exists, then God cannot be the creator of anything, because from where would anything come? So that's the kind of a dilemma, that as God is the creator as long as there is creation, your Atman is the ruler as long as there is something to be ruled over. And that something which is to be ruled over is not ultimately real. And therefore, the Atman's rulership is also not ultimately real. Therefore, Atman is still not doing anything really and doing everything apparently. That's your Vedantic Zen for you.
So, Swamiji, it gets confusing because when we try to, so if I'm witnessing my actions, let's say I'm brushing my teeth and I'm witnessing my actions, I can feel myself separate from my body and my mind, and I'm just doing that, it's the body doing its things. But as soon as I get immersed in some activity which requires complete concentration, then I have to become that thing. I have to.
You don't have to, but you become like that thing.
And then, but in that case, you get absorbed, and then you will forget that you are the. You are
It's
the
like if you are able to brush your teeth without becoming one with yourself, then you should be able to do other things without becoming one with yourself. Now that we are not able to do, that's a different matter. But at least you cannot say it's impossible, because if that were impossible, you wouldn't have been able to witness yourself even brushing your teeth. So all that we can say is, at present, it may be possible for us to be witness of some of the things we do, but some of the other times we are not able to maintain that witness attitude. That's the thing.
So Swamiji, one more question. So if, let's say, when Krishna was fighting wars, and he was a warrior and he was fighting wars, could he maintain the witness attitude while he was fighting?
Well, Krishna did. He was right there in the battlefield. I mean, who would have thoughts of highest philosophy right in the battlefield, right? So yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, one thing we have to have a firm confidence in, that if whatever Krishna says here were impossible, he would never have taught it. He would never have said, then do it. So the very fact that Krishna is saying, do it, means it is possible. It may be difficult. It might seem very difficult, but it's not impossible. That's because none of these great teachers will ask us to do anything and just kind of enjoy and say, hey, these fellows, I'm just it's like, no, it's possible, yes. So we will stop here today, and then we'll continue. If you have any more questions, just hold them, and we will continue this next week. We'll begin next week on verse number 65. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. Our subject on Sunday will be self-reliance versus self-surrender. Well, a part of what we discussed today, we'll have chance to reflect a bit more deeply on this on Sunday. Next week, we'll continue with the study of the Gita, and on Tuesday and Saturday, our Arati and meditation will also continue as usual. So let's conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.